One type of grammar that can be really difficult for students is knowing when to use a gerund and when to use an infinitive. They are both words that look like verbs, but they don't always behave like verbs. And in fact, most of the time, they behave more like nouns in a sentence. So we're going to talk about today what the difference is between gerunds and infinitives. When do you use one? When do you use the other? What are some of the rules with these types of words? Let's first talk about gerunds. Gerund is the ing form of a verb, but it's how it's used as a noun. Most of the time, when we think of an ing form of the verb, it's in a progressive tense, present progressive or perfect progressive. But it can also be used as a noun. And when we use it in that way, it's called a gerund. It's used exactly the same way as you would use a noun. You can use it as the subject of a sentence, or you can use it as an object, either the object of a verb or the object of a preposition. So here's an example where it's the subject. Swimming is my favorite sport. So here the subject of the verb is, it's swimming. As an object, I love swimming. So what do you love? Swimming, object of the verb love. And then finally, the object of a preposition. I'm excited about swimming. About what? About swimming. Gerunds are often used as the object of a preposition. And in fact, if you have a verb form after a preposition, it must be a gerund. So infinitives do not follow prepositions. Only gerunds follow prepositions. Example, I'm interested in learning about gerunds, or he complained about studying gerunds. One thing that can be a little bit confusing is the word to, T-O. Sometimes to is part of the infinitive form, which we'll look at in a little bit, but sometimes to is a preposition, like I sent the letter to you. I'm going to the movies. In those cases, to is a preposition that shows direction or movement, and it's not part of an infinitive form. For example, I am opposed to studying gerunds. In this case, to is a preposition that follows the verb oppose, so I don't want to say I'm opposed to study gerunds. That would be incorrect. Some verbs take gerunds as their objects. For example, I enjoy swimming, or she suggested going to the movies. Also, some phrasal verbs are followed by gerunds. Usually, if the phrasal verb has the same meaning as a one-word verb that is also followed by a gerund, they're both followed by gerunds. So, for example, he postponed writing the essay, or he put off writing the essay. So postpone and put off, postpone the one-word verb, put off the phrasal verb, both of those have the same meaning and both are followed by the gerund. Some other examples of verbs that are commonly followed by gerunds: enjoy, appreciate, mind, quit, finish, avoid, delay, keep, consider, discuss, mention, suggest. I'll put links to some more extensive lists that you can take a look at later. There are also some special expressions with gerunds. For example, the verb go is often followed by a gerund in idiomatic expressions. And these expressions are usually about recreational activities, so activities that you do in your free time or activities that you do for fun. For example, I went shopping yesterday. And you would use this in any verb tense. I go, I went, I will go, I am going to go, I have been going. Any verb tense that uses some form of the verb go with a recreational activity would follow this pattern. Some other examples of activities that you might use: go biking, go bowling, go camping, go dancing, go fishing, go hiking, go running, go skating, go singing, go swimming. Lots of ing activities that you can do. Some other special expressions that are followed by a gerund only: to have fun doing something. So I had fun watching the game, or to not have fun doing something. To catch someone doing something. I caught my brother reading my diary. Some other examples that follow this pattern: to spend or waste time or money doing something, to sit, stand, or lie in a place doing something, and to find or catch someone doing something. Let's move on to infinitives now. An infinitive is to plus the simple form of the verb: to walk, to eat, to sleep. These are some examples of verbs that are followed by infinitives: hope, plan, decide, promise, agree, refuse, appear, pretend, ask, expect, want, need. Some verbs are followed first by an indirect object and then by an infinitive. For example, the teacher encouraged the students to study. Some verbs that follow that pattern: tell, advise, remind, invite, allow, warn, require, ask, and expect. So now let's talk about infinitives and gerunds together, because there is some overlap. Some verbs can be followed by either one, a gerund or an infinitive. A lot of times there is no difference in the meaning. For example, if I say I love to cook versus I love cooking, there is really no difference in the meaning of these two sentences. But sometimes there is a difference in meaning. Sometimes the meaning of the verb actually changes depending on whether or not that verb is followed by an infinitive or by a gerund. For example, I regret to inform you that your application was denied versus I regret sending in that application. In the first example, the verb regret means that I'm sorry to have to tell you, or I feel bad that I need to tell you. So that's the meaning of regret when it's followed by the infinitive. In the second example, I regret sending in that application. In this case, regret means I wish that I had not done it. So the gerund here changes the meaning of regret. When it's followed by an infinitive, regret means to feel bad. And then when regret is followed by a gerund, it means to wish you hadn't done something. Some other examples of verbs that change in meaning depending on if they're followed by an infinitive or gerund: remember, forget, regret, stop, try. I'll also put a link to a list of some of these verbs and the explanations and how their meanings change. Both infinitives and gerunds can be used as subjects. It is often used as a dummy subject or a placeholder subject with an infinitive phrase. For example, it is fun to study English. A gerund, on the other hand, usually appears at the beginning of the sentence as the subject. Studying English is fun. Infinitives can appear at the beginning of a sentence, but it's way less common. For example, to study English is fun. It almost sounds like Shakespeare: to be or not to be. It's way too formal. It's grammatically correct, but it's not used very often. So either use a gerund as the subject or use the it placeholder subject with an infinitive phrase. We can also use infinitives of purpose. This is using infinitives to answer the question of why. And we use the phrase in order to express this purpose. However, you can use the infinitive with or without in order, and it has the same meaning. So I can say she left in order to catch the train on time, or she left to catch the train on time, and both of those mean the same thing. Why did she leave? To catch the train on time. Don't use the preposition for with infinitives of purpose. For can also express purpose, but you don't need to use it together. The infinitive alone can express purpose. Certain adjectives can also be followed by infinitives. Usually, these adjectives describe a person, and even more specifically, they describe how a person is feeling. For example, I was shocked to see the Blackhawks score 2 goals in 17 seconds. I, a person, and shocked, the adjective followed by the infinitive. Or he was lucky to win the lottery. These are some common examples of adjectives that follow that pattern: happy, sorry, sad, upset, disappointed, embarrassed, proud, ashamed, ready, prepared, anxious, eager, motivated, determined, careful, afraid, certain, likely, and unlikely. Verbs of perception. Verbs of perception just means your 5 senses. Verbs that describe the action that's happening with your 5 senses. So some common verbs of perception are see, notice, watch, look at, observe, hear, listen to, feel, smell. And verbs of perception are usually followed by the simple form or the ing form of the verb, so the gerund form. So I either have I watched her dance in the street, or I watched her dancing in the street. But I do not say I watched her to dance in the street. That would be incorrect. There really is not a big difference in meaning between using the simple form of the verb or the gerund in this case. Some verbs also are followed by what's called the bare infinitive. And so what that means is it's basically just the simple form of the verb. Let and help are often followed by the simple form of the verb. So I would say my sister let me borrow her sweater. I would not say my sister let me to borrow her sweater. That would be incorrect. Another example, I helped my mother clean the house. In this case, I can actually use both the bare infinitive and the regular infinitive, and they're both correct. So I could also say, I helped my mother to clean the house. Causative verbs. Some causative verbs are verbs that the subject causes or forces the object to do something. And some of them are followed by the bare infinitive, and some of them are followed by the regular infinitive. Make is followed by the bare infinitive. Scary movies make me have nightmares. Have is followed by the bare infinitive. The teacher had the students complete an essay. However, when you use get as a causative verb, it is followed by the regular infinitive. The students got the teacher to dismiss class early. If you have any questions, we can discuss those in class. Otherwise, there are some links to reference lists and practice that you can do on your own.